I'm going to provide a concise or limited examination of a brief biblical passage following through, working backwards through a lineage of translations. So I'm going to begin with the most recent version in this lineage, which is the New Revised Standard Version, and this is the updated edition of that. This passage is Matthew 22, 22nd chapter, the 36th through 40th verses. I'm not going to set it up. I'm just going to read the passage. Teacher, which commandment in the law is the greatest? He said to him, You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the greatest and first commandment. And a second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets. So that's the New Revised Standard Version. This was originally published in 1989, and there have been some updates of it that have been in this century, but it's basically 1989. It derives from the Revised Standard Version, which is the one which I personally use the most. I have a couple printings of it, and it's what I used as a child, and I've kind of become accustomed to its face. So 1952, okay, the Revised Standard Version, Matthew 22, 36 through 40. Teacher, which is the great commandment in the law? And he said to him, You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the great and first commandment. And a second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments depend all the law and the prophets. Now, you may be saying to yourself, particularly if you go back and you listen to the New Revised Standard Version, or if you happen to have both copies in front of you, you'll say, these are the same, and they are very, very similar. There are some differences in punctuation. So the New Revised Standard Version has a comma after teacher, which I think the Revised Standard Version does not. That may be a matter of particular printings as well. The New Revised Standard Version uses the word hang. So on these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets, whereas the Revised Standard Version says on these two commandments depend all the law and the prophets. Otherwise, they are essentially identical. All right, so let's probe this one a little bit further. The Revised Standard Version of 1952 is a revision of the Revised Version, which is... There are two versions of it. There's the American edition, and there's what in effect is the British and Commonwealth English version. So that the latter of the two is the Revised Version. I'll present that in just a moment. The American version, or this is often called the ASV, the American Standard Version. It's the proper title of it is the Revised Version Standard American Edition. This was first published in the New Testament portion in 1900, and the Old Testament was first published in 1901. So people who have the whole thing have a 1901 edition copyright date. Okay, so this was my grandmother's preferred version. So the Revised Version, Standard American Version, or the ASV, reads, "Teacher, which is the great commandment in the law? And he said unto him, Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. This is the great and first commandment. And a second, like unto it, is this, Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. On these two commandments hangeth the whole law and the prophets." Now, you can start to see where the changes are made, and they are really pretty slight. But the NRSV says hang. The RSV says depend. And for some perverse reason, in 1901 or 1900, they decided that we'll say hangeth, even though that was an archaism at the time. Of course, so was thou and shalt and so on. Okay, so that's the American Standard Version. The Revised Version, Master, which is the great commandment of the law? And he said unto him, Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. This is the great and first commandment. And a second, like unto it, is this, Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. On these two commandments hangeth the whole law and the prophets. All right, so here's another difference. So far, going backwards, of course, there's been a consistent treatment of some word. We're looking at English translations here, but the lead-up question is teacher, 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 teacher. And now the Revised Version of 1881 tells us master, master, which is the great commandment of the law. And we've got this hangeth thing going on here. All right, so that's the Revised Version of 1881. So the Revised Version of 1881 is a revision of what a lot of people call the King James Version, the Authorized Version of 1611. And that version went through many, many printings. It was a very popular book. And various errors came in through the process of printing. These were largely corrected by a man named Benjamin Blaney in 1769. And most people who are reading the King James Version are reading a corrected version from 1690 or 1769. So it's the 1611 edition, but with the corrections made in 1769. So here's how that one reads. Master, which is the great commandment of the law? Jesus said unto him, Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. This is the great and first commandment. And the second is like unto it, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets. So, on that hang, depend, hangeth. And here this older version doesn't say hangeth, it says hang. And that's a bit of a mystery. Also, another change which occurs in some of these is that some of them say in the law and some of them say of the law. So, which is the great commandment of the law, says the 1611 version. The American Standard Version says in the law. And what are some other changes? The 1611 version tells us who is responding to this question. It says, Jesus said unto him. What are some others? It says, the second is like unto it. The Revised Version of 1881 says, and a second like unto it is this. So what you'll observe through this, and we could reverse the process and go from the Authorized Version or King James Version on through to the New Revised Standard Version. You'd find, first of all, that they're very similar. They're very, very closely similar. They are not identical, but there are whole chunks of it that are. So the taken as a whole, it's really pretty much the same. The meaning, of course, is the same. The Greek that lies behind all of it is presumably consistent. That's for another video. But you can see how closely similar they are, and yet there are these little sort of nibbles along the edge of difference. And those little nibbles can sometimes make a bit of a difference. So again, we've got hang, hangeth, depend. I would say probably that one and the change from Jesus to he. These are the biggest changes that are in here. Some of the ordering of whether it's the second that's like unto it is this, or whether it is the second is this. I'm not sure that that's going to make a whole lot of difference in terms of anyone's theology of the whole thing or interpretation of it. But the hang versus depend, this points to something interesting, which I will explore at another time.